Welcome to this edition of Rattling the Bars. I'm your host, Mansa Musa. In an essay called Towards the United Front, George Jackson saw that the sheer size of the prison population made it right for mobilizing prisoners into a non-sectarian united front with the goal of abolishing the prison industrial complex, among other things. Since that essay, the prison industrial complex has grown. Today, over 1.9 million people are behind bars in the United States. In a recent report by the Prison Policy Initiative entitled Punishment Beyond Prison, Incarceration and Supervision by States Shown in America, the overuse of probation and parole, along with mass incarceration, over 55 million people are in the system of mass punishment and under the control in some shape, form, or fashion. Joining me today to talk about how JustLeadershipUSA see these numbers and what they are doing with them is DeAnna Hoskins, President and CEO of JustLeadershipUSA. Welcome, DeAnna.
Thank you.
Tell our Rattling Bars a little bit about yourself, please.
Right. DeAnna Hoskins, President CEO of JustLeadershipUSA. I've been at the helm of the organization since 2018. I actually was a leader who went through the training program in 2016. I'm an individual who's been impacted by the criminal justice system, formerly incarcerated, that has been able to break through some of those glass ceilings of places they told us we couldn't go, places and spaces. Prior to coming to Just Leadership, I served under the Obama administration as a senior policy advisor, and I managed all of the federal government's investment in corrections and reentry, which included the Second Chance portfolio, the National Reentry Resource Center, collateral consequences of criminal convictions, and children of incarcerated parents. I've been in this field about 25 years. I worked in my hometown county government as director of reentry, establishing reentry perspectives around that area, and also within the state of Indiana, as most people would say, who goes back, who's incarcerated and goes back and work in the correctional system. I actually worked as a unit manager at the state of Indiana's Pendleton Correctional Facility. So I've not only been on the inside, I've actually come out and worked in the administrative and service side of this as well.
Yeah, very well put. And you heard me set this up, George Jackson come out and George Jackson made this observation. And when he made this observation, he made the observation about the need to utilize the prison population to create a non-sectarian organization for the purpose of abolishing prison and organizing around social change. Now, Just Leadership USA says that has a 4-year plan, and it says for building local power and dismantling oppressive systems. Tell our viewers and listeners how this came about. How did this 4-year plan come about?
So one of the things, again, having worked in all levels of government, the inside of government, from the state, local, and federal government, one of the biggest things that I realized was that anything that is moved from the local up to federal almost forces the federal hand to change. Mm-hmm. Anything that comes from federal government and rolled down always gets attacked and addressed by new administration. And I'll give you some examples. Same-sex marriage came from the states up to the federal government, forced their hand. We're looking at the same with legalized marijuana, right? Is rolling from the states, forcing the government's hand. But things that come out of the government, such as what they titled Obamacare, every time a new administration comes in, they attack anything that comes out that benefits oppressed and marginalized communities. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we realized was that the oppressive policies that are actually hindering us are hindering us at the ground level. We don't need the federal government to try to fix things for us around policies. Because I'm going to be honest with you, and one of the things about me, I'm very authentic. Policy and legislation will never free Black people.
Come on.
A lot of times we got to talk about how we even got here to incarceration and mass incarceration, right? It's right. The legacy of slavery. At the abolishment of slavery, it still was a way to still utilize free labor with debtors prison and different things of that nature. So when you looked at the misdemeanor system, it was still a way, it was created
That's right.
a way to still incarcerate the bodies to provide the free labor, right? So for me, it's about understanding my history of how we got here if I'm going to try to dismantle it. And the only way you can dismantle anything, nothing changes until those most oppressed rise up into power to change it. Every discipline in this country, whether it's mental health, substance abuse, veterans, women's services, use people directly impacted by the issue they're addressing.
That's right.
Criminal justice system has been the only system that is reluctant to utilize the voices and power of the people that have been incarcerated to help change and address the system. And we basically here saying, we ain't asking for permission no more. We'll apologize later.
Okay, and you know what? And right there, let's unpack that. Because I did 48 years in prison. And I organized, and the entire time I was in prison, I organized. Now, it stands to reason, and both of us can agree to this, it stands to reason that those that's on the other side would be more than eager to rattle the bars, more than eager to raise their voices. All right, and in this regard, Just Leadership is saying that y'all hanging y'all hat on those that are impacted, those that are locked up, those that are locked out, those that are on parole and probation, that y'all hanging y'all hat on them and this class of underserved people to be the voice, the face of Just Leadership USA.
Yes.
How do you get them to respond? Because as I said, you got, and you know this yourself, you got a myriad of things that be going on with people coming out. Yeah. I ain't got no place to stay. I ain't got no job. Baby mama drama. Trying to get back with my kids. Trying to link back up with my family. So you know it's a myriad of problems that's going on. How do y'all get them, or what make you feel so boldened by this approach?
So one of the things is we work with organizations typically led by individuals who've been directly impacted across the country to help with those immediate needs. What we don't do is actually exploit people and say, we're going to put you on the front line. We want you to use your voice. No, we're not going to do that. If you interact with us when you first come home, how do we connect you locally so you can be together? Because you have to be together if you're going to stand for the people you left behind, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't even accept a person into our leadership training unless they've had 3 years post-incarceration. But that doesn't mean we don't interact and engage with you and try to connect you to what you need with the people and the leaders we have. So one of the things that I want to talk about, something you said about the myriad of things going on, that's one of the reasons we're empowering, because the system is focusing on, they say, recidivism reduction, right? We want to make sure you get out and stay out. But you want to be focusing on it from the system being successful, not the individual, right?
That's right.
I can be homeless and not go back to prison. I can use drugs and not go back to prison. Does that mean the person is successful, or is the system successful because I just didn't go back to prison?
Right.
So how do we even hold the system accountable with discriminatory practices that they have, which is why this Just Us Coordinating Council is important, because it doesn't take legislation. It actually takes rulemaking to take the word discretion out of the housing, a definition of who's homeless and who has access to housing. How can you deny us a basic human need that every human on this earth needs, whether you have a criminal background or not, right?
That's right.
You have stated that housing is a basic human need.
That's right.
And we got 600,000 people coming out every year that could be blocked of a basic human need, and you say, go be successful. Hell, like you ain't even supplied me with the foundation
right.
of what any individual needs to be successful. And actually, you allow the discrimination in your policies around giving discretion to local housing authorities to say who can come in and who can't.
And you know what? And right there, I noticed that that's one of the things I found enlightening in regard to the this organization is the policy impact of that. And where I work for a group called Voices for a Second Chance. And the supervisor always say, if you're not impacting policy, if you're sitting around the table and you're not impacting policy, you sitting around the table like Malcolm say, don't call me a diner because I'm sitting there with a plate.
Right.
I'm sitting around the table. But let's talk about policy. One, because going back to your point, we can be in this space and you can have me sitting at the table with a plate, an empty plate, and I really think I'm a diner because I got an empty plate. Not so much as I got an empty plate, but because you told me I'm getting ready to eat and I ain't got nothing on my plate yet. But because you gave me this false narrative. So we know we confronted with that. How do y'all get around, or how do y'all educate people to understand policy, impacting policy versus getting a feel-good response?
Right there. I am so happy you asked that because that was one of the biggest challenges when we said we were going to do this, right? So we walked in knowing not only do we have to impact and empower people to build this table, we have to educate them. Because what I found out, a lot of people, when you say advocate or advocacy, they think a t-shirt and a bullhorn. And I'm
That's
like,
right.
No, this is the inside out game. And one of the things I like to tell people, if you serve time, that means you committed a crime.
Man, come on.
I need you to know is all your skills that was in that lifestyle were not liabilities, right?
Yeah.
I need you to understand some of them are transferable skills over
That's right.
out of the
That's
road.
right.
And you have to utilize that. And part of that is, I use drugs. And I tell people all the time, I didn't wake up one day and know how to use drugs or how to cook up the product that I was using. Somebody taught me.
That's right.
If you're going to work in this lane, you have to be willing to be taught the same way you was willing to be taught in the streets, right?
Right.
Find somebody, you have to have a mentor. You have to be educated because the big thing is people power equals change. And the best thing that they do to break us apart is if you're not knowledgeable of what you're sitting at the table for. The respect comes when you sit at the table with the elected officials or other people who are making a policy and you shut them down better on their policies than they can.
All right, let me ask you this here. How do you get around the poverty pimps? And the poverty pimps is the ones that's in this space that we're dealing with that's grant chasing. So here I am, I'm with you, and you educating me. And I acquired these leadership skills, and I'm going over here, and I'm in an environment where I say, oh wow, they don't have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Just leadership. Look, help me get A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so I can keep the mission going. And then when I get the return, I keep the money. And the people that's supposed to get what they supposed to get don't get what they get what they always got nothing.
Oh my God, that has always been the thirst of it. So one of the things Just Leadership is the training part. We do our trainings, we raise our funds, we train you to be able to communicate, to go after your own funding for your own organization.
Right.
The Just Us Coordinating Council this is open to the 70 million of us who have been impacted.
That's right.
Be educated on how the policies, even from federal money that rolls to your state, how we teach you how to go push at your state where that money is and how it ain't coming to our communities when it's supposed to be designed, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But you're right. How do we stop people from having their own agenda? People are always going to have their own agenda. Our hope is that the JCC stands within itself, because if you start talking policy, I'm not chasing the grants.
That's right.
So here's how I break this down, having worked in government. I break it down to games. Chess is legislation. That's the long game.
That's right.
Checkers is grassroots. That's your grab and get funding and all that. And what I share with them, one of the things I'm going to share with you all are doing criminal justice reform work, poverty pimping on that level.
Yeah.
You only in Department of Justice and DOL's pocket. That's like going to an amusement park and only enjoying a water slide. You ain't even figured out all the money in the federal
That's right.
to even get, right? So you don't even know how to play this game for real.
Right.
That's why it's so scarce, because they've pigeonholed us to one department around funding. Do you know how much money Department of Transportation puts out across this country every year to fix roadways and bridges? If they simply adopted a Section 3 process like HUD, that says any federal dollars that roll into your state or your city, 35% of the workforce has to come from the most impoverished zip codes in your area. Do you know the game changer that would be in certain cities? My city is getting ready to overhaul a bridge that is getting ready to cost $20 million.
Yeah. Everywhere you see it's a brick. Every look, what they call who will use the term mortar and shovel. One of the presidents used the term mortar and shovel as an indication of how the money going to flow. But let's talk about that, because you made a that's a good observation that, okay, and we know that we got this class, and I know from experience, and when I got out, we got out under a legal case. All of us had life sentences. Right. So all of us that got out, right? Everybody that got out, with the exception maybe 2 or 3 out of hundreds, maybe 2 or 3 recidivated. Everybody else, they hit the ground running, and they've been doing remarkable work and good work in that regard, right? So how do we coalesce with all these elements throughout the country that's like that? In Kansas, in California, in the South, in Virginia, in Maryland. Yeah. How do we coalesce with? How do y'all go about coalescing with them?
So that's our goal to start building, taking our leaders we have now and saying, oh, you in Maryland, you in Michigan, you in Chicago, you in Illinois. Now we want to come in and help you build a coalition in your state. Then all of us come together twice a year in DC and show up.
Yeah.
People power equals people. But that's right. If you working on something in DC and you say, DeAnna, I'm working on this needs to be changed in DC. If we got if it's 70 million of us with a record, if we just got 10% of that to participate with us, and we all support your issue by sending in letters, signing on to your legislation, whatever you're doing, that shows you got power behind you, and no matter what state you're in, that this is an issue. And that's what we've never shown. Formerly incarcerated people have been exploited for everybody else's.
That's right.
Right? People write a bill. Oh, we need formerly incarcerated deleted. They give them a $10,000 check. They show up, right? Yeah. And who am I to tell you not to eat?
That's right. Come on.
So therefore, you're still being exploited. But when it get to Congress and they start redlining it, we don't have a say to say, hey, we got carved out of there. And I'll give you an example. First Step Act was great for whoever didn't understand legislation. It was retroacting to crack the cocaine disparity. It was saying you couldn't over-incarcerate certain people. But here's what y'all didn't catch that we came out and said. It legislated a risk assessment tool that had already been determined racially biased.
I know that. Come on.
Black people will never score low on a risk assessment.
That's right.
Because our communities are over-policed and our schools have more police counselors, right?
Deck stack.
Then y'all didn't even pay attention when I said again that how are you going to say the only people eligible for the crack the cocaine retroactive have to be the people who did not have a weapon involved? Well, in the hood, drugs and guns go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, come on.
You're not a drug dealer without a weapon, whether you used it or not, whether you banished it, whether the clip was in it. Y'all allowed them to exclude us out because why? Because y'all didn't have no power. And then y'all didn't understand how this plays out in our communities. Let's be honest. The 94 crime bill was a good policy on paper. Nobody knew how it was going to play out in communities.
That's right.
So what we're saying, you don't get to push legislation without our voices. And matter of fact, I don't want to ask for permission to join your bill. We're going to build our own table to have enough power that when they push your bill back, and they say, well, formerly incarcerated can't participate in the legalization of marijuana because they got a felony. How you going to create a policy that white men finna get rich off of what we've been going to jail for years and we can't even partake in it?
Yeah, come on.
We'll shut this bill down. And if not, we got enough people power to vote you out of office.
All right, so as we wrap up, talk about where you're at right now in terms of, because I know we all just came out of Washington. And so what's the next step for Just Leaders USA?
So, of course, we just launched in DC to make sure people knew who we were. We were able to empower directly impacted people. We're going to hold general call-ins for people to keep joining. We're going to give them updates. But right now, I'm headed to DC to do a sit down with DOJ leadership around some of our issues that are in our demands. I'm meeting with Department of Labor to say, this funding that we're asking for to help us. This is when I talked about the game, the chess and the checkers. There's a middle game called backgammon.
That's right.
That's the strategy, right? With backgammon,
that's right.
Strategize.
That's right.
Nobody flies at that, and that's the administrative level. That's the senior leadership who's going to be there no matter who's in the White House. The NAACP keeps showing up no matter who's in the White House because Black people issues have not went away.
That's right.
Currently incarcerated we're going to keep showing up because our issues haven't went away. So we got to learn to fly at the backgammon level in the gray zone, that it doesn't matter who's in the White House. Our issues are important. We're not going to wait for other agencies to say, this is the legislation we need to push, this is policy we need to change. We're going to understand ourselves and show up and speak for ourselves, because typically the policy and the legislation others push for us continue to entrench harm in our communities. And we always say, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu.
There you have it. The real news, Rattling the Bars. We're not playing chess no more. We're not playing checkers. We at backgammon. We're at the strategy level.
Yeah.
And being at the strategy level, we ask that you evaluate this information as it came out today. If you're formerly incarcerated, if you got a number behind your name, if they put handcuffs on you, if they gave you a record, then you're a valuable asset in this coalition called JustLeadershipUSA. Then you had the last word. What do you want to tell our audience?
I just want to tell everyone that we have been oppressed and marginalized for too long. If everyone believes in a system of rehabilitation and corrections, they will not have the continued barriers and policies in place that allows us, once we re-enter, to still be blocked out of being a productive member of society. One of the things we have to know is that you are valuable, you are a leader, and you have a right to have your voice heard. And that is what Just Leadership is about, giving you a platform, providing you with the education and empowering you to elevate your voice so that we can disrupt and change the system that has been oppressing us for too long.
There you have it. And speaking of a platform, we ask that you continue to support this platform known as Rattling the Bars and the Real News. It's only on Rattling the Bars and the Real News that you're going to get someone like DeAnna Hoskins to come and educate you on the strategy of getting self-determination, the strategy of being empowered, and not sitting at the table with an empty plate and somebody coming telling you that, just wait a minute, you'll be served in 1 minute, and that's been like 20 years later, you still waiting for something to eat. We ask that you continue to support this organization, this network, and we ask that you continue to rattle the bars. Thank you, DeAnna.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for watching the Real News Network, where we lift up the voices, stories, and struggles that you care about most. And we need your help to keep doing this work, so please tap your screen now, subscribe, and donate to the Real News Network. Solidarity forever.